The Wealth of First Nations, written by Tom Flanagan. Tom Flanagan is a professor emeritus of political science and distinguished fellow at the School of Public Policy, University of Calgary.
This book is about the conditions for prosperity for First Nations. This is recognized as one of the biggest public policy challenges for Canada, is how First Nations can achieve a higher standard of living. And this book reviews what First Nations have done for themselves to attain that goal. I wrote the book because I wanted to bring together about 10 years of research that I had conducted on the conditions for Indigenous prosperity. I had published probably about a dozen different papers in think tank outlets online. I wanted to put it together into a more coherent and overall treatment. It's widely recognized that the Indigenous standard of living is lower than that of most other Canadians, and what can be done about it? Well, what I wanted to study was what Indigenous people themselves are doing about it. Some First Nations are doing much better than others. So I wanted to find out what the successful ones are doing that is giving them a higher standard of living. The biggest thing I found was that for them to succeed, government has to get out of the way. The most important factors have been relaxations in the Indian Act, which give First Nations more latitude to chart their own course. For First Nations leaders, I think reading this book will give them a stronger idea of what their colleagues are doing. It may help them to do a better job for their own people. It's important for the public to understand what works and what doesn't work, so that they won't be led into supporting false options. And for policymakers, the main lesson is that First Nations are doing this for themselves, and that Canadian policymakers have to give them the room to succeed. I'm glad I published the book when I did, because I think it helps to make some information available about what will work and what won't work. Well, I certainly would like to thank the research institutes that have supported my work over the years. The Fraser Institute, the Frontier Center for Public Policy, and in a somewhat smaller way, the Atlantic Institute for Market Studies. But I couldn't have done the work without the financial and logistical support I got from these organizations. And beyond that, I'd like to thank the people that helped. This is really a collective project, because I had the help of young research assistants there are too many to name, but these people made it possible for the research to be done. And then finally, the peer review system, which is used by think tanks, similar to that used by university presses. And this was a source of a lot of useful suggestions. We're talking here a couple of dozen readers. It's too many to name. But I'm certainly grateful to everybody who's contributed to what is fundamentally a group project, although I helped pen on it.
The Wealth of First Nations, published by Fraser Institute.